The night had started quietly enough, but quiet nights in their house rarely ended without something bubbling to the surface. It was a Tuesday evening, the kind that should have been ordinary. Wine had cooked dinner, nothing extravagant, just some rice, curry, and a little fried okra, because she knew he liked it that way. He had come home late, shoulders slouched, tie loosened, his face scarred with exhaustion from work. She had greeted him with a smile that felt too pushed, hoping he wouldn't notice. He hadn't. By 9, the dishes were done. Television hummed in the background and she had pulled out her phone, scrolling with the half interest through some silly reels a friend had sent her. She giggled quietly at one, hugging her knees to her chest on the couch. That was when it started. Really, his voice came from behind her, heavy, sharp. She turned, startled, phone still in hand. He was standing in the doorway of the living room, arms crossed, brow furrowed. You are sitting here laughing at cartoons while at the bill I have to take off fees which needs your sign as sitting unopened on the counter. Her smile faltered. It's just a video, There. 2 minutes. What's the problem, isn't it? Always 2 minutes here, 2 minutes there, always avoiding what actually needs to be done. You told me you would do it. God, you are so... He broke off, running a hand down his face, then spat out the word like it was a poison. Childish. The word cut deeper than he probably intended. She blinked at him, feeling her chest tighten. I wasn't avoiding anything. I just needed a moment to... A moment? He repeated bitterly. You always need a moment. Life doesn't pass just because you are tired or moody. Grow up, will you? Stop acting like a kid who can't handle responsibilities. Her thought closed. She wanted to shout back to remind him of the 100 little responsibilities she handled without complaint. The groceries, his forgotten dry cleaning, the calls to his mother, the small repairs in the house when he was too busy. She wanted to scream that she wasn't childish, she was exhausted. But the words wouldn't come. Instead, she set her phone down on the cafe table with a deliberate calm, like if she moved slowly enough, he wouldn't see the trembling in her fingers. Fine, she said quietly, I will do it. He sighed, already half turned away. Just once, I wish you would stop acting like this. The silence afterward felt heavier than his words. She sighed the papers that they both were partners in some projects, not seeing what's written in it, only hearing the echo of that word, childish. By the time she finished, her eyes were burning. He was already in bed when she peeked into the bedroom. The room was dark, only his shape under the blanket visible. She stood there for a long moment, waiting, hoping, maybe for him to say something, anything. But he didn't. So she turned away. In the hall closet, she pulled out a spare blanket and one of the thinner pillows. The couch wasn't comfortable, it was never. But tonight, it was her only refuge. She arranged the blanket carefully, her movements cliff, mechanical, as if that couldn't hold her together. The living room felt colder once she turned off the last light. She curled up on the couch, tucking her knees close, burying her face in the pillow to hide the sting in her eyes. She thought about their wedding, how he had promised to protect her, how he had sworn to be her safe place, how he used to kiss her forehead when she was upset, how he used to pull her into his arms without asking. Where had that man gone? The couch springs dug into her hip. She shifted, but comfort wouldn't come, neither did sleep. Her mind replayed the fight over and over, each replay sharper, more painful, childish. The word followed her like a ghost. She hated that it came from him, the one person whose opinion she couldn't ignore. one point, she heard the creak of their bedroom door. Her heart jumped. Maybe he came to get me. Maybe he realized. But no. Footsteps pattered toward the kitchen, then the sound of a glass filling with water. The footstep retreated, and the bedroom door clicked shut again. No words, no reaching out. Her chest ached. She pulled the blanket tighter. Meanwhile, in the dark of the bedroom, Taehyung lay awake. He had thought sleep would come easily after the long day at work, but it didn't. His mind was restless, circling back to the look on her face when he had said it. He hadn't meant to be that harsh. God, he knew she did it alone. He knew she's tired, but the stress of the work had boiled over, and she had been the one to catch it. Childish. The word echoed back to him, and suddenly it sounded as justified as it had an hour ago. It sounded cruel. He turned on his side, expecting to find the tip of her body next to him, the soft warmth of her hair tickling his arm. Instead, the bed was cold, empty. Frowning, he started, slightly, eyes adjusting to the dark. Wine? He called softly. No answer. He swung his legs out of bed and padded quietly down the hall. The sight stopped him at the doorway to the living room. There she was, curled into the couch, blanket pulled up to her chin. Her hair spilled across the pillow, her face half buried, but he could see the faint puffiness around her eyes, even in the dim light. Guilt glowed at him. He stood there for a long time, torn between pride and apology. He wanted to kneel down, to wake her gently, to whisper that he hadn't meant it. But the weight of his own stubbornness held him frozen. Finally, he turned away, back in bed. He lay awake for hours, listening to the silence. The morning light seeped through the curtains, pale and cold, spilling across the living room floor. Wine sat up slowly on the couch, her body aching as though she had hit by something heavier than exhaustion. Her head, her throat burned, every breath rasped like sandpaper. She pulled the blanket tighter around herself, tucking her knees to her chest. Her eyes drifted to the side table where a half-empty glass of water sat from last night. She reached for it, but her hands trembled and she almost spilled before taking a sip. The water tasted metallic. Her chest felt heavy as she tried to take in air, the chill of the house pressing against her skin. With every cough, pain shot through her ribs. Great, she thought bitterly, as if last night wasn't enough. Dragging herself up, she shuffled to the bathroom, splashing cold water on her face. The reflection in the mirror startled her pale cheeks, glassy eyes, hair tangled. She looked nothing like the girl who had once stood beside Taehyung at the altar in shimmering silk, beaming up at him as though the world belonged to them. Her fingers pressed against the cool edge of the sink. Maybe he is right, she thought faintly. Maybe I'm childish. But the thought hurt more than the fever did. Meanwhile, across the city, Taehyung was failing spectacularly at focusing on work. His desk was littered with reports. The screen in front of him blinked through graphs and data he was supposed to analyze, but all he could see was the image of her curled up on the couch, small and frank that looked far too thin. He had barely looked at her before leaving that morning. He hadn't woken her, hadn't dared. She looked exhausted, and he told himself it was better to let her sleep. But there had been something off. Something in the way her face seemed too pale, the faint crease in her brow as though even in sleep she wasn't at peace. He rubbed a hand across his face, sighing. "Sir?" His assistant poked him head into the cabin. "The meeting? I will join later." He cut her off. Sharper than intended, she blinked and retreated quite quickly. He pinched the bridge of his nose. What the hell is wrong with me? It wasn't like he hadn't argued with her before. Marriage wasn't perfect, and they had both tempos. But last night he had crossed a line. He knew it that moment he saw her take the blanket and walk out of the room without a word. And he had let her. Now the guilt was gnawing at him, relentless. Finally, by early afternoon, he gave up, showing his files into the drawer. He muttered something about urgent personal work and left the office. The house was too quiet when he pushed the door open. Wine? He called softly, stepping inside. No answer. His chest tightened as he moved toward the living room. The sight hit him like a punch. She was still there on the couch, bundled in the blanket, but now her skin looked clammy, her lips pale. Her breathing was uneven, broken by small gasps. He was at her side in an instant. Wine, hey! He knelt down, brushing the hair from her forehead. The heat under his palm made his stomach drop. Fever. Her eyes fluttered open, hazy and tired. You are home early, she rasped, her voice barely a whisper. You are burning up, he said, panic threading through his thought. Why didn't you call me? You should have. She turned her face away. Why would I? You made it clear last night. I'm just childish. The words were quiet, but they pierced deeper than any scream could have. He flinched. Why? She coughed, cutting him off, her body shaking under the blanket. He cursed under his breath and stood quickly. Wait here. In minutes, he was back with a glass of water and a strip of paracetamol. Here, take this. I don't want it. Fine. I don't need you to fussing over me now just because you feel guilty, she said weakly, eyes brimming. His chest twisted. He hated himself for putting that look in her eyes. I am guilty, he admitted, voice low. I was an ass last night. But right now, you need medicine. Please just take it. She looked at him for a long moment, lips trembling, before finally taking the pill and swallowing it down with a sip of water. He let out a breath he hadn't realized he had been holding. Lie down, he said gently, adjusting the blanket around her shoulders. She didn't fight him this time, though her eyes stayed guarded. He sat beside the couch, watching her as her breathing slowly evened out. Guilt swelled in him, heavy and unrelenting. He reached out, hesitated, then finally brushed the back of his fingers against her cheeks. She was still so warm. The hours passed in a gaze. He made soup terribly, but at least edible, and caused her into sipping a few spoonfuls when she stirred. He fetched wet towels, pressing them gently against her forehead to cool the fever. Through it all, she remained quiet, speaking only when the absolute necessary. The silence was worse than anger. It was like she had built a wall, and he hadn't known how to climb it. At one point, as he replaced the damp towel on her forehead, she whispered, "Why are you doing this?" "Because you are my wife," he said simply. Her eyelashes fluttered, a single tear slipping down her temple. "You didn't sound like you wanted a wife last night." The words made him flinch again. He wanted to argue, to say he hadn't meant it that way, that his frustration hadn't been about her as a wife, but about himself, his stress, his failure to balance work and home. But the truth was, he had said it, and she had heard it, and nothing could take that back. He cupped her cheek gently, forcing her to meet his gaze. "I was wrong. I was angry, and I took it out on you. That was cruel. I'm sorry." Her lips parted slightly, as though she wanted to reply, but instead she closed her eyes, exhaustion pulling her under again. He sat there long after she drifted into sleep, his thumb brushing against her hand. Never again, he sobbed silently. Never again I will let my pride hurt like this. That night, he hadn't returned to their bed. Instead, he pulled a chair next to the couch, blanket draped over his shoulder, and stayed by her side. Every time she coughed, he was there with water. Every time she stirred in the dim glow of the lamp, he studied her face, the same face he had once fallen in love with. Stubborn and radiant, strong but so vulnerable in moments like this. And for the first time in months, he realized how much he had taken her presence for granted. As dawn crept in, he whispered softly, I don't care if you're childish. I don't care if you're stubborn. I just can't see you like this. She didn't hear him, but maybe, just maybe, she felt it. The first thing Wine registered when she woke was warmth, not the feverish heat that had plagued her all night, but something steadier, softer, the weight of a hand loosely curled around hers. Her lashes fluttered open, the dim light of early morning spilled across the living room, casting long shadows. Taehyung sat slumped in the armchair, pulled close to the couch, his head tilted at an awkward angle, lips slightly parted in sleep. The blanket draped over his shoulders had slipped, revealing the crisp line of his shirt collar. He looked uncomfortable, but he was there. Her gaze dropped to their hands, his large palm covering hers, as though anchoring her to him even in sleep. Something inside her chest ached, and she quickly turned her face away, blinking hard. Last night came back in fragments, his fussing, the medicine, the soup, the quiet apology whispered between feverish breath. She hadn't wanted to let him in, but he hadn't given her much choice. Now, in the clear light of morning, it was harder to hold on to her anchor when the evidence of his care was sitting right there, drooling slightly in his sleep. She almost smiled, almost. Then the memory of Oi's childish grow up slammed back into her and a flicker of softness died. She pulled her hand gently from his grasp. He stirred immediately, blinking groggily awake. When his eyes landed on her, relief flooded his face. You are awake? He murmured, leaning forward. How do you feel? Fine. She lied, voice raspy. He frowned. You still sound sick. Stay put. I will get breakfast. Before she could argue, he was already on his feet, blanket slipping further down his shoulders as he strode into the kitchen. She heard cupboards opening, the clatter of pans, the low humming of his voice as he muttered to himself. It was strange hearing him in her kitchen. Cooking has always been her realm. He rarely ventured beyond making coffee or toast. Yet here he was, banging around like a man possessed. When he returned, he carried a tray slightly crooked, a little soup spilling over the rim of the bowl, but his expression was triumphant. Sit up, he said firmly, setting the tray down. I made porridge. Don't ask how, just eat it. She raised a brow, lips twitching despite herself. You made porridge? Don't look so shocked. He adjusted the pillows behind her, careful, but insistent. It's edible, I promise. She glanced at the bowl doubtfully. Edible doesn't sound very reassuring. Try it before you mock me. He scooped a spoonful and held it out. She stared at him. I can't feed myself. I know, he said softly, but let me. The sincerity in his eyes got her off guard. She hesitated, then leaned forward slightly, allowing him to guide the spoon to her lips. The porridge was bland, a little too watery, but warm. She swallowed, hiding a smile. Not bad, see? He looked absurdly proud. I can do more than sign contracts and shout at people. A smile faded at the word shout. The memory of last night crept back in. She looked down at the bowl. Maybe you should stick to the porridge then. The jab was quiet, but it landed. His expression fell too. He set the spoon down, exhaling slowly. Wine. She shook her head, cutting him off. Just don't act like the one night of cooking and honoring my maker for what you said. I'm not trying to erase it, he said quickly. I know I hurt you. I'm just trying to show you I'm sorry. Her eyes simmered, but her voice stayed sharp. Sorry doesn't make me forget that when you're angry, that's what you really think of me. Childish, a burden. He flinched as though she had slapped him. That's not true. I don't think you are a burden. I was frustrated and I lashed out. But you meant it, she whispered, at least a little, otherwise you wouldn't have said it. The silence stretched heavy. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees, his eyes fixed on her. Then let me prove it isn't true. Let me show you every damn day that I don't see you that way. Her throat tightened. She wanted to believe him. God, she wanted to. But the wound was still fresh, raw. She looked away, blinking rapidly. Eat your porridge before it gets cold. He huffed a laugh, not unkindly, deflecting again. Learning from the best, she shot back, surprising them both. For a moment, their eyes met hers. Barry is hopeful, and the tension cracked, just slightly. The day passed slowly. Taehyung refused to go to work, insisting she wasn't well enough to let to be alone. He hovered shamelessly, bringing water, adjusting the fan, fussing over the blanket, until she threatened to throw the remote at his head. At one point, he tried making tea. She nearly choked on it. This is something, she said carefully, swallowing the bitter sip. He grimaced. Okay, fine, I can't make tea. Happy? Ecstatic, she croaked, the corner of her mouth lifting. The sound of her laughter, faint and joyous though it seemed to light something in him. He smiled, really smiled for the first time in days. She noticed, she always noticed, and it made holding on to her anger harder. That evening, as he tucked the blanket around her shoulders, she caught his breast, stopping him. Taehyung. He looked down at her, eyes questioning. Her voice was small. What if you said was the truth? What if deep down that's really how you see me? His chest tightened. He crouched beside her, taking her hand in both of his. Then I will spend every day proving you wrong. Because I swear to you, why? You are not childish. You are the reason I even get through my days. I just forgot to show it sometimes. Tears pricked her eyes. I don't want to be something you forget. You are not, he said fiercely. You are everything I can't forget. Her lips parted, trembling with the weight of his words. For a heartbeat, the wall between them seemed too thin, fragile enough to break. But then she looked away, pulling her hand back. I'm still angry. I know, he said quietly. I will wait. And he meant it. That night, she slept on the couch again, but this time, when she stirred awake in the dark, she found him there beside her, not in the armchair, not in bed, but on the floor with a pillow and blanket, close enough that she could hear the steady rhythm of his breathing, close enough that if she reached out, her fingers would brush his. She didn't, but for the first time since the fight, she wondered if maybe, just maybe, he would keep trying. Until she let him in again. But things didn't go like that. He opened his eyes when her fingers were inches away from brushing his hair. What were you trying to do? You can't keep doing it. I will pretend that I'm asleep. Wine didn't say anything, she just stared at him. I forgive you. His eyes lit up when he heard it. What? I forgive you for saying that, Taehyung. Really? You do? Yes, I do. He leaned over and swooped her in bridal style and walked straight towards the bedroom. Then, without saying anything, his lips crashed onto hers like it was a magnet who couldn't resist her presence anymore. I'm really sorry, he said, pausing the kiss for a moment before going for it again.